Well, it's been another long 6 or so months since the Clio was last out, and do you know what? This little Halfords cover has actually done really well. It's still dry in here, it's got no damp or any mould on the steering wheel, which is nice to see. I'm actually really impressed with those for the money. So yeah, let's put it back in neutral, save me wiping out the neighbour's fence. I hope it's going to start. So 6 months, the fuel pump will need it's a bit lazy. There we go, I can hear the fuel pump. Woohoo, fuel in it again. I'm getting good at this. Right, moment of truth. Oh, yeah, on the button again, bless it. What a car, what a car. I mean, clock's reset and everything where I've had the battery off just on a trickle charger, but every time this thing is just solid. Good afternoon YouTube, and welcome back to the channel and Clio 172 Cup. It's been 6-7 months, maybe 8 months since I last had it out. So in today's video we're going to do a little recap on the build as it stands currently, what it's cost me, what's planned for this year, and we're going to try and sort these wheels out today, which unfortunately the track brake pads with the mixture of Cadwell and me not being very sympathetic with the cooling down has made quite a bit of damage, so stay tuned. Now, as those who watched the video last year will know, I took the car to Cadwell Park and absolutely ruined the beautiful Trinis that I had done in this wonderful bright silver. It's absolutely burnt them to a crisp, and I just tried this morning, after various other wheel cleaners failing, the Auto Finesse one step, which I'm going to machine polish the 46 with. And if you look, it's actually brought it all back to original. So I'm going to take the wheels off, put them in the garage and see if we can get those back to a factory looking finish again. So with the cup all cleaned up, looking absolutely lovely again. For the age of this car, what, 2002 registered, it always looks so brilliant once washed. And I haven't even done a lot to it in terms of polish and stuff, but quickly I did do the headlights. They'd gone a little bit yellow on the corners, so using that same one-step Auto Finesse that saved the wheels, I quickly went over and did the headlights, and you know what? They've come absolutely brilliant. So we're going to go through the cost now. I'm sat pretty uncomfortably on the harnesses, but I thought it's the best view for the sort of talk of the expenses, and I've got the trusty iPad as well to go through everything. So the car cost me £1,300, which I think now was probably, this has got to be been with me 7 years, something like that. I'll try and put a little bit in the bottom if I can be bothered to dig the logbook out. But yeah, had it some time and I paid £1,300 for it. It came with the RS2 intake manifold, which my company many years ago designed, which was the big appeal for buying it. And it also came with a fifth Turini, so a spare one, which isn't standard, but you do get the spare wheel well to fit it, and a full 2.5 stainless steel exhaust catback system. The car was only ever purchased to be a bit of a winter run around, something to tinker with, before they became valuable, because back 7 years ago, these were cheap cars, £1,000, £1,500, you could get a good 172, nearly a 182. But with COVID and obviously the rarity and people going back to the analog, the hardcore driving cars, especially with the Cup, it's such a driver's car, even in standard form, that it was only ever meant to be a run around to keep the salt and rust off the E46 M3. And ultimately, when I turned 30, I was going to take the E46 to the Nürburgring, but I thought, do you know what? It's not worth the risk. It's too much value for me. I didn't want to bin it. My first time round it, properly driving it. And me and my brother took the little Cup. We did a video on that, which is in the playlist, which I'll link at the end. And do you know what? It performed absolutely flawlessly. There were obviously things I wanted to change on it, but for the money it owed me, I was more afraid of the ring crash bill than the actual write-off for the car. But yeah, the car did really well. Got us there, got us back. Absolutely no issues to report. So the little Cup sat in storage for probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years, while I worked on Project E46 M3. It was a bit neglected. My partner's mum at the time kindly let me keep it in her garage. We sort of put some boxes around it so she could move stuff and get in there. And yeah, it did look a pretty sad sight when I first bought it out. Again, if you go right back to the beginning of the playlist, which I'll link for the project, it weren't looking too clever, to be honest with you. With the car out of storage, it was time to get stuck in, and for me the 172 Cup was never going to be something that I would really use on the road. I wanted it to be an all-out track car, like I guess most people say, and maybe a bit of a B-road blaster, so it didn't need to be practical, it didn't need rear seats, it didn't need standard seats, it didn't need a radio. I stupidly put wraparounds in it because I thought it'd be a proper race car, but then I found out you can't actually use them at the Nürburgring, which was... that was a big fail on my half, unfortunately. But yeah, so ultimately, do need to change the seats if I want to go to a Nürburgring, which I do have a spare one in the garage from the S2000 project if I need it. But it does add to the experience. It really makes it feel special when you're out in it, even though you are sort of ducking to go and see what's next to you and stuff. It is a bit of a nuisance. But yeah, it does feel really cool when you're out in it, in the right mood, especially with the... pure motorsport gear stick rattling away. But yeah, anyway, I digress. Let's get into the full cost breakdown. I'll do it in engine, interior, and I say I've got the iPad, so I've got all the figures in front of me. I'm sure some of you are sitting there going, God, why add it all up? Why torture yourself with the expenses? But at the end of it, for me, I just like to know what it owes me, and that's something I've always done. I always keep all my service history in order, and ultimately, as you'll see today, it soon shows how it adds up. Okay, so let's run through engine first, and as I mentioned, it came with the RS2 intake, so I had a good base to work with really. She's a little bit leggy, it was like late 129,000 or something when I bought it, but did the pure motorsport gear linkage kit, that came in at £315, makes a massive difference, really direct, but does unfortunately have this horrible rattle that you may have heard earlier in the video on the startup. I've got the big Ram air filter on there, overkill for this spec, but it was really nice because it's got like a metal tapered trumpet in it. The wrinkle paint, which gave it a really nice effect on the rocker cover and the coil pack, that came in at £26. The heat foil for the back of the bulkhead came in at £12. The big service kit, so all the cam belt, coolant, oil filters, oil, everything, that I've got a rough figure down for £350. I did the expansion tank, which came in at £20 because mine had gone yellow and was looking pretty grim. I've got the race battery cage up in the front for £25. The plenum paint come in at £15, so a friend did that for me. Unfortunately, the clear coat has started to bubble and blister a little bit, which is disappointing, so it really needs to be sanded back down and done again. But it was never built to be a showpiece, it's just a clean track car, so for the moment it can stay. I've got the race battery coming in at £95, which is the Odyssey, I think it's the PC680. There'll be a little clip that goes over the top anyway, so you can have a look yourselves. Gearbox oil came in at £40. The airbox heat shield was £20, which obviously we fabricated earlier in the series. Brand new radiator came in at £95, and a decat and gaskets £105. And the reason we went with the decat is, again, I'll link it in the playlist, but ultimately it went to the dyno. The catalyst was ticking a lot. For me, decatted cars now are a pain, but the price of getting a sports cat fabricated versus a straight pipe, I just made the decision to put the straight pipe in it. But I do plan to fit a sports cat back in it because I just can't be dealing with the aggro of trying to get it MOT'd, removing it, refitting each year. But the total for the engine came in at £1,153. On to the interior. So, like we mentioned, pretty special place. Does feel race car, bit stupid for the road, but we are what we are. The steering wheel comes in at £205 for the Seibelt one. For the Eagle Eye spotters here, this is not actually a Mark II one, because a Mark II Seibelt steering wheel should have a little blue bit on the top, which would work with the Cup well, but unfortunately it just gets grubby and dirty if you've got messy hands. So this is from the Mark III 197-200 Cup Racer, which comes all in the black, and that was £205. Thankfully I already had a steering wheel boss from the awful OMP one that the previous owner had fitted on there. It was in anodized blue, and I rattle canned it black because it was just such a state. So I had the boss, just needed to buy the steering wheel. The Bimarco grip seats that we've mentioned, wraparound for the pair, back then was £570, which for an FIA seat is pretty well priced, especially when you compare it to Recaro's, but I think their prices have gone up a little bit now. The universal alley side mounts for both came in at £90, and I decided not to keep the runner, so it's just bolted directly to the chassis for maximum weight saving and in my driver's position. The OMP harnesses went with a big 3-inch slat rather than a 2-inch. For the pair they came in at £170. I've got it detailed as a ratchet strap for the rear, which came in at £6, just to hold the spare Turini down. Realistically, it's got the wrong tyre on it, so I'd never use it. It would be just get me out of trouble sort of thing, but I did it more because I like the look of having it. The old rally cars where they used to have the spare wheel in the back. The harness bar, which was something I discovered early on with spinal compression, pretty nasty stuff, comes in at £150. I've had so many people ask me, where did that come from? And unfortunately the company that used to produce them no longer does. So if you do want one of those, I can't advise where to get one, but that did cost me £150 painted. And then finally for the interior, £30 in rattle can paint to paint it all in the Mondial blue, so it matched throughout. It just really cleaned the inside up rather than it looking like a ghetto stripped out track car. So the interior total comes in at £1,221. On to the exterior, probably the cheapest part of the build. So the headlights, £105. Now the reason I changed the headlights is on the 172 Cup they don't come with the xenons, they come with the crappy halogen bulb ones, and they are absolutely useless. And they also don't look particularly great, and once upon a time, probably not so much now, you used to be able to, like I say, pick a pair of good ones up for around £100. They plug straight in. Technically they're not legal because they don't self-level, they just run off the leveling on the interior, and they don't have the washer jets, but I've never been stopped or had problems for them. The splitter, the famous Skoda splitter to be exact, £14. So the original one from Renault is the better looking one, comes in about £130. It's brittle. If you hit anything with it, especially like me with a lowered car, they just crack and go in the bin. At least with the Skoda one, it's flexible, nice and cheap, and if by some miracle you did damage, easy to replace again. The wheel refurbishment, not really just a cosmetic upgrade. I mean, obviously they looked awful with the wheels flaking when I dropped them down to stand to be fully refurbished, but they were also losing pressure because the powder coat on these, which is notorious for the Speedline Torinis, was just absolutely awful, all peeling off everywhere, just looked an absolute state. And I sent those off. He did that for £270, and at the same time we got the new 808Rs fitted, so it sort of tied in with fitting those as well. But £270 to have them fully stripped back, refurbished, all the curb marks welded up, which I didn't do. And yeah, they just looked absolutely fantastic, and still do now, as we proved in this video. When I polished them back, you can actually get that track compound off the brake pad removed with some of Auto Finesse's polish. The final bit for the exterior, the little slim number plate, came in at £15. I think it's an 86mm drop standard length, and it just fits perfectly in the recess. Makes a really nice difference for sort of the way it ties the front end in, especially for £15. Again, because I'm still running a front plate, it doesn't look bait as not running a plate, and I've never had any issues with it on the road. On to the handling. Well, the Cup did handle pretty well, to be honest with you, when I had the IBACs and standard dampers. It was like a good compromise for road use, and it went around the ring without any real complaints. So the first thing I did was the tyres, £280 for the 808Rs and the proper 808Rs, not the new RS, which isn't as good, unfortunately. So you can't get those anymore. When these do eventually die, which I think I've still got a bit more use in them with mileage I cover, and they performed absolutely brilliantly at Cadwell for the day. But 280 quid for the set of 4, definitely won't be getting them for that price again, unfortunately, on a 16-inch. The coilovers went with the Bilstein, was it the B14 or the B16? I can't remember. It's the non-adjustable kit, and that came in at £700. Works absolutely fantastic, even with all the weight being removed from the car. I got the Pure Motorsport rear hub spacers, which move the wheels out 10mm. They were £30. I've got front spacers, which I think are 15mm. They were £36. Needed loads of archwork trimmed out to make them work, so that wasn't a straightforward fit, but it looks great. The Powerflex steering rack bushes, £25, stop the rack moving because the bushes had all worn out. Track rod ends came in at £45. Front rebuild kit for the front brake calipers because they had all sort of, it just looked a state. The pistons had pitted, the seals were looking really tired. That came in at £35 for the kit. And then finally, front brake discs and pads with the uprated pads, which, were they PBS brake pads? Yeah, I think they were PBS brake pads, and Brembo discs, £175. And you know what? They were absolutely fantastic, which is, for seeing them on Cadwell, other than the mess they made of the wheels, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I do need to work on some brake cooling, but we'll come back to that later in the video. But that all came in at £1,326. So the total cost, including buying the car and building all the bit, or putting all the bits on, which doesn't include any labour, and obviously prices have all gone up now. You can't really get a 172 Cup in good order for £1,300 anymore. But my total build cost came in at £5,404. And I think today's money, you could easily double that to get to this standard, with a basic Cup starting at £3,000 to £4,000. And then by the time you've bought all the bits, done all the bits, and whether you'd want to pull apart a Cup now because they're coming quite collectible, you could easily have a 10 grand build on your hand. So my advice, if you can find a clean one, buy it already done, unless you want to do what I did, where you did it yourself and you're proud of what you've built, even though you can't even take it to the Nürburgring, which you built it for, because I fitted a set of wraparounds. Funnily enough, while we're talking about Mark II Clios, for those of you that don't know, I used to work on these many years ago, hence the JMS, James Michael Stone, inlet manifold that I designed with my old business partner. I really want a Mark II 182 trophy. I saw one at Caffeine and Machine the other week, and do you know what? It just looked awesome. I wouldn't even need to do a lot to it. Maybe some springs, a little bit of spacing, little say-belt steering wheel, and then just as it is, I think they look really cool at the factory. And when they first came out, I thought they were massively overhyped, because realistically, it's only the colour and the Sachs dampers that you're paying all the money for. The Recaro trend lines look nice, but not a massively supportive seat. But now, yeah, one of those. Imagine that next to the Cup. That'd look really cool in the collection. But yeah, prices of those at the moment, unless I buy a doer-upper, not going to be anytime soon. So the future plans for the little 172 Cup. Well, I've got a bad drive shaft. I'm pretty sure it's on the gearbox side. Clunks a lot when you're accelerating and turning. It really doesn't sound very nice at all. I'm surprised it didn't give up at Cadwell when I was coming over the little hill sections, hitting the limiter. I thought, if that's going to be the place, it's going to fail there. So I'm going to need to go genuine Renault. Unfortunately, the pattern ones from experience just either don't fit properly or do not last very long. So I think it's probably £150, £200 day out for a genuine Renault drive shaft, but that's definitely got to be done before I really take it out again, because I think that's going to go. And I also need to have a look at the drive shaft clip. Apparently there's a tip for welding it in. I've never seen the sort of, we call it bodge fix, without taking the gearbox out, but again, it's something that I could do without stranding me if I'm in Germany when I do get the seats changed over. The big one is fitting the 197-200 camshafts I got from Matt when we did his Clio 200 tuning down at Engine Dynamics. He put cat cams in the car, took the standard ones out, and they go straight into this, and they give you roughly 5 horsepower, and with the car running 195 horsepower at Engine Dynamics previously, we should be able to break that 200 horsepower mark, which realistically you're not going to feel 5 horsepower in a car like this, really, are you? But it would be cool to have the little bragging rights with the sheet that it's a 200 horsepower Cup. And I'm going to need to put the 197-200 fuel injectors in, and the reason for that is, don't quote me on the exact figures, but Andy said that I was running 93% injector duty cycle at about 7,000 RPM, or was it 90%? And this was still making power to the red line. So he said to me, if you do go out in it or you track it, just don't hang top gears, because there's a good chance that you could have an injection problem. Mentioned earlier in the video, another thing I need to do is the brake cooling. Not that I had any fade, definitely after those hard laps. I think I went out for something like 15 laps around Cadwell in the end of the day, really giving it hell. and I noticed the brakes were definitely not happy, and when I came back in, the smell coming off them wasn't great. So I do need to look at doing some sort of brake cooling. I don't know whether I can pick it from the inner grille next to the radiator and run them back through, because one of my fog lights is feeding the airbox, the other one's blanked off, so I can either delete the passenger side headlight and then have a feed for the airbox and then use the original fog lamp points for the brake cooling. I don't know, that's going to be something we're going to have a look at. But yeah, let me know in the comments, guys, is there anything you want to see on the Cup, anything in particular you'd like me to explain in further detail? I am going to obviously fit all the cams, and I've got all the genuine timing tools and the group end tool so we can advance the inlet cam. So if you want to see that video, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, we'll just go straight to getting it to the dyno, back at Engine Dynamics, to see if we can crack that 200 horsepower, and more importantly, with the new injectors, run it safely at that power. Until next time, thanks for watching.